Welcome to the CE Pro Podcast. I'm Executive Editor Arlen Schweiger. Whenever Sony announces a new home video product, the industry takes notice. The company recently introduced 3 new laser-based projectors, and that certainly caught the attention of our regular podcast Video Guys guests, Joel Silver of the Imaging Science Foundation, Jason Dustal of Murideo, and Robert Zohn of Value Electronics. Senior editor Bob Archer gets their take on the new projectors, plus tips on how to optimize home AV environments in this week's episode. As always, be sure to subscribe to CE Pro's YouTube channel and hit that like button on our videos, or subscribe to the CE Pro podcast on Apple and Spotify and leave a review.
Hi, I'm Bob Archer, Senior Editor with CE Pro Magazine, and today we are back for another edition of the Video Guys with CE Pro. We have Joel Silver from the ISF, Robert Zohn from Value Electronics, and Jason Dustal from Murideo. How you guys doing today?
Awesome, Bob. Thanks for having us, man. It's always fun hanging out and talking with you.
Thank you guys for coming out or coming on to the podcast. We're going to talk about today, I think, some of my most favorite topics. That's projectors and screens, and in particular, Sony's new trio of projectors that they had announced last week. They announced trio, as I had said, at various price points. They're kind of slightly above entry level, and they hit more into mid-level, upper mid-level, I would say, in pricing. So starting right off with this, I'd like to read something for you guys, and then we'll get right into this. Starting at $6,000, they released the 2000 lumen VPL XW5000 ES. It steps up from there to the $12,000 2500 lumen VPL XW6000 ES, and then $28,000 for the 3200 lumen VPL XW7000 ES. All of the models include Sony's new 0.61 inch native SXRD chipset, and they also include Sony's X1 Ultimate for projector processors, and the 2 upper end models in these trio of projectors include the ACF lens set. Getting right into this, guys, what do you think of these new Sony products and Sony's effort to continually push the home video category in terms of 2-piece projection systems? And Robert, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I had the great honor and pleasure of being at Sony's headquarters in San Diego to view these projectors with the engineers, as well as their press conference just less than 3 weeks ago in New York City again, where they showcased these 3 new projectors. They are fantastic. It's beautiful to see an image with that video processing, so you can enlarge the image and still control all the anomalies that you would normally expect from blowing up a low resolution content to a very large image size where you would have maybe cable content. The X1 processor does such a good job of cleaning up the anomalies and making it look like a higher resolution image, so it doesn't have that enlarged look of a low resolution content. The blacks are very deep and rich with wonderful contrast control from the minimum luminance all the way up the line to the highest peak lumens. You'll see very detail in every level. The new processor was tuned to not only do the tone mapping frame by frame, but to also look at the 1,096 steps of illumination of every single frame and recreate the contrast at every step of illumination. So you see more detail in the image. It looks more dimensional, almost naturally 3D looking, with a lot more detail because of the control of the contrast of the gradation of each step of luminance level. Of course, color is very accurate and very full and saturated. These are gorgeous projectors. As you step up the line, my personal favorite is the 6000 ES because you're getting that very high-end lens. This lens was re-engineered and redesigned from scratch. Now, this sounds crazy, and in my life, I would never believe this if it wasn't proven to me. This is an all acrylic lens. Ooh. No glass. I was disappointed when I heard that. But I spoke with the optical engineers as well, And with plastic, because acrylic is plastic, they can actually get a cleaner lens, a clearer lens. And with the new acrylics, they can actually get a better than a glass lens. Now, I'm still a little cautiously optimistic about this, but when they projected the images, they were so sharp and crystal clear and across the entire screen. It couldn't have looked the lens couldn't have produced a better image. So I've been trained in optics my whole life. I'm good on optics, and I would have never believed this if I didn't see it and speak with the optical engineers myself. Especially when you move up to the 6,000 and 7,000, you get this lens that just makes the full screen so crystal clear and clean. It's remarkable to see this advancement. So video display has advanced quite significantly this year in projection systems, and JVC and all the other major premium brands, Epson, they're not sleeping either. They got premium products there as well. So this is just a very, very big upgrade year for projection systems. We're getting deeper, richer blacks. We're getting a more dynamic tonal range with more detail. We're really getting a cinema presentation of HDR. And you can all attest to that's not an easy achievement. We're getting HDR in the cinema, in the home movie theater.
Joel, could you speak to how rapidly the processing for these products has evolved over the past several years?
We've been consulting our processing engines for a very long time. And there was a point where one specific engineer with one particular $24,000 product rocked the industry. And years ago, we used to do in what was called Infocom, now Avixia, we used to do a processor shootout. And the Ferrugia processor was so far beyond everything else. We used it as a reference. So it didn't win the shootout. It was the winner of the shootout. The question was, how close could you get to Ferrugia technology without A, violating the patents, and B, costing more than $24,000? So what we're seeing now in the few $100 range in chipsets is performance way beyond what we were doing back then. And some of the things are easier than ever before. Now, Robert mentioned HDR rendering. One of the beautiful things about HDR that's not discussed very often is the difference between relative systems like, HLG and normal everyday broadcast television, where relative to blacks and whites, we have various degrees of luminance at different levels. HDR is an absolute system, which simply means if you've got, over 1,000 steps, it's defined. We know what the content at a certain bit level should be. So we've expanded the bit depth, but more importantly, at each level, we know what the luminance should be. It's not guesswork. So we know exactly how it should track. The limitation is going to be, can you track the entire luminance range of the mastering device, which for projection right now is no. For most flat panels, the answer is maybe, we're getting there. But if you can be accurate up to the point where you can light up the screen, it becomes beyond theatrical. So a couple of wonderful things happening. Number one, and this is a byproduct of COVID, the lack of movie theater attendance is obvious. What's not obvious is the quality of the streams that are coming our way. And it's not obvious because the systems in most people's homes can't take advantage of the streams. Not enough HDR out there right now, but those of us who are fortunate to have HDR systems at the vanguard of things, and if they're tuned properly where the absolute values are visible on screens, the tail is now wagging the dog. We're not trying to catch up to movie theaters, which we did for the first 20 years of our company. We just wanted to get as close to commercial theaters as possible for the best commercial theaters. Guys, we're exceeding the theaters. We're way beyond them in luminance. We're way beyond them in audio quality. I mean, the amount of dollars spent per cubic foot in homes exceeds theatrical. The amount of dollars spent per square inch of screen exceeds theatrical. And, I had the pleasure of taking Jason Dustal to his first Dolby Vision demo a while ago and watch him crush the arms of the chair he was in and almost giggling. Oh my God, look at the colors and look at this. Look. I'm excited now. We're all excited because that took us beyond anything we had seen theatrical. And the launch of that has been stalled by the plague, but that took us to a different level of theatrical. And that raised expectations for me in a number of ways. Number one, my own personal system had gone beyond that a while ago. So they're looking at 3 to 4 times as bright as conventional theaters with better blacks. We're looking now at theaters that in homes are beyond that by a wide margin, where we're looking at 200, 300 and more nits off the screen on a projector, which if you have a new technology that lets you to do some modulation of the blacks, because you've only got a certain amount of dynamic range in any projector between white and black, but what's happening with laser technology, I can actually do some processing and make blacks better with modulation, which we tried in lamp-based products with little lenses that had apertures that open and close, which made noise, drove us crazy, and it was slow enough to aggravate you, because when the scene got dark, it then got darker. So the modulation just has to be faster than me. If I don't see it working, it's fine. And I never saw it function properly in a lamp-based product. So here's a big shift that Robert's talking about. This has been 20 years in coming. We're moving from a lamp-based product industry to a solid-state industry.
That's right.
It started with LEDs way back when, and that puzzled us because we looked at the actual wavelengths coming out of the LEDs, which were pretty feeble in light output, but they looked brighter than they were. And it took a lot of research to realize it was the spectral power distribution. What wavelengths are there in green? And the answer would be very few compared to lamp-based products. Instead of a broad number of wavelengths hitting our eye, it was a spiky few. And laser and quantum dots takes that to another level. So measuring here techniques don't correlate with what we're seeing to a large degree. So we're starting to have some of the adventures that someone like Dr. Floyd Toole in audio has been documenting for a very long time, to try and correlate measurements in audio with what we're hearing. So we're now working on measurements in video that correlate with what we're seeing. But what we're seeing is better color, brighter color. And Robert mentioned the LCOS development. LCOS as a technology has always had the potential for wonderful blacks.
That's right.
JVC, for example, cut their teeth on making blacks really look good. Sony has made progress on their blacks. That's phenomenal. But this is the content that you can get out of an LCOS device. Canon's done a good job on the commercial side. We've used the Canon projectors in some of our studies because they also are LCOS based, and they're no stranger to lenses. And what Robert mentioned about lenses deserves a little follow-up here. Being a lens fiend, my first exposure to wonderful lenses went back to an old used aerospace product on the used light valve products. They put 3 Leica lenses on a large projector that was the size of a jet ski. And Leica invented 35 millimeter photography. They've been around for a very long time. They also were pioneering something in the way of a very strange grind of glass called aspheric elements. Aspherical is not necessarily just a curve. It's got a reverse curve inside the curve. So grinding that by hand, long, tedious, extremely expensive process, where a lens that's a little bit bigger than $50 would be $5,000 to $7,000. Putting it into acrylics. So Robert, what you are seeing there isn't just the progress in acrylics. It's what we can do in lens formulas affordably in acrylics that is never, ever going to be affordable in glass, besides the increase. So the lens formulas that Leica pioneered, and some of these aspherical lenses, they're over $10,000 for just a small lens. But that formula going into projection was inevitable. We've seen it happening, but you're not going to see it in glass. So better light engines with better blacks, better optics. And let's throw one more complication in here that actually changed everything. Screens that function with light in the room. And the general category, ambient light rejecting screens. So what this has done for the industry as a whole, and I've got the privilege with Jason, we're co-chairs of a committee on video performance. And it started out as a standard for home theater. And the idea of doing a reference quality room with lights on when we first started the home theater standard was, just science fiction. It wouldn't happen. We had flat panels that were okay, but tiny. We had video walls that had pixels so large they looked like $50 on the wall, and they had no blacks. Ambient light rejecting screens were in infancy, but we didn't have enough horsepower to drive them. So all of a sudden, let's go to our quandary right now for writing a standard for video. And we're in the middle of it as we speak. So Jason and I chaired the HDMI committee we've talked about on these podcasts before. That's done. The new one on video standards will be 4 tiers. and that will be performance standards. They'll start with the lowest tier, go to the highest, but I don't care if it's going to be a dedicated room, a media room, outdoor video, or a gaming room. I've got the horsepower and projectors. I've got the quality in wall-based products that we are dreaming about. It's now here. I'm not saying it's here affordably, but it's here. You can buy one. I would have one tomorrow. One we actually specified. You've got to be 15.9 feet wide to get 4K native. I've got the room for it, but the system costs more than my house, so it's not going to go into my house right now. But it exists at a price that's not feasible for me, but it's going into some mansions, it's going into yachts. So what we're looking at now is a performance standard in 4 tiers. And we can do it in multiple applications, from media rooms to L-shaped kitchens and den rooms to outdoors. So you're not going to get a level 4 state-of-the-art room with some light on. That's still going to be the realm of light control and high budgets. But level 3, it's much more difficult to get good audio and good video in a multi-purpose room.
Yep.
But it's now feasible. And in audio, it wasn't feasible too many years ago. In video, it wasn't feasible until the last couple of years, when I've got high-powered projectors, good optics, couple that with good blacks, throw in HDR content into the mix, and I can make pictures with light in the room where in the early days, if you lit a match, you watched out the picture.
Yeah.
So now I can have a gaming system where people can see the controllers in the hands. They can actually work the controllers. They can see the keyboard. They can have a 15-foot wide screen, and they can do racing at price on object items. Take it down to a 7 or 8 foot wide screen. Still pretty impressive. And don't discount what's going on in gaming. They have scooped us as far as performance on high frame rate. So the 120 hertz, which we've been waiting for a long time. Let's just say we launched TV in 1939, not far from where Robert is, at the World's Fair in New York, with FDR on screen, kind of far away because the Secret Service was freaked out by the TV cameras and wouldn't let it get close. But he was on screen. We broadcasted him, and we launched 60 pictures per second in 1939, and we're still watching it. The 120 is a huge step forward. And one of the things we'll talk about is, in techie terms, spatial and temporal resolution. What's spatial? Pixels left and right. What's temporal? How many pictures are we sending you per second? So let's talk about it in simple terms. We're changing space and time. And the processing engines you're looking at right now at 60 hertz, they're not designed for 60 hertz, guys. These things were designed for 120.
That's right.
They're going to handle 120 now. Do we have the content? Yeah, PlayStation and Xbox. They scooped us. The Olympics in Japan 2 seasons ago were scheduled for the coming out party for 8K HDR, and we failed because the world changed. It's still there. The cameras are there. The cameras are functional. We have transmission capabilities. So right now, if you want the 4K 120, it's the gaming domain. And I've played some of the games. I'm a driving game guy. So 120 in driving is amazing. I'm not a big first-person shooter, and I don't think it's really that important for first-person shooters, but a tennis type thing where you're hitting a ball, and the games my kids play where they're jumping and moving over obstacles and things, at 120, they're smoother, they're better. And if any of you have seen football or hockey or tennis at 120, it's like that HD moment when you went from SD to HD and said, I don't want to watch SD anymore. This space and time thing, we've got the space. That's taken care of. Temporal's around the corner. The processing is good for it. We've got potential for the next 2 or 3 years to revolutionize sports. Now, Robert, you've already revolutionized movies for your clients. So your clients are now used to HDR in movies.
Yes.
So Robert, the intriguing thing you put together here, Mr. Archer, is you've got me in the theoretical side dealing with the pre-production products and video standards. You've got Jason doing nuts and bolts tech support for people actually making these things connect and work to each other, and that's when Murideo cut its teeth. And you've got Robert Zohn on the firing line trying to keep people happy and making sure when he presses play, it actually plays. And he's had some grief with that. And if it was HDR on Tuesday, you also want HDR on Wednesday and Thursday.
That's
and
right.
switching back and forth between a gaming system, a cable system, a streaming system, a disc-based system, or a download system like Kaleidoscape, they've all got slightly different quirks and different EDIDs, and being able to keep connectivity there is a recent thing. So Robert, if I asked you that 3 years ago, did you have an ulcer based upon HDMI 36 months ago?
Yes, indeed. HDMI has greatly improved, and I thank you so much. I have a bit of a question on this. If we get native 120 hertz projectors and televisions, would 24p benefit with a 5.5 pull down?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because 24p and...
Because it is a multiple of 5.
Absolutely, but there's a push
Okay.
from every film school I know of to stay at 24 for good reason. And we've just lost an asset to the film business that I personally will miss terribly. After 27 years, Mr. Joe Morgenstein from the Wall Street Journal wrote his final column.
Oh no!
Hurt me because I have leaned on that man for content. He has found little movies for me, like Coda, that eventually became major award-winning. But he has plucked things out of the stars for me. And he talked about film as being an art and a business. I got to quote him, and he needs to be recognized for the quote because he lived this world for 27 years. And at the end of the column, he thanked us all for the privilege of writing the column. And man, did he have a privileged existence watching movies for a living. But the way he wrote his prose, the wit, the talent, and when he trashed a movie, man, he trashed a movie. It was
he went hard, yeah.
And when he promoted one, I just bought it.
Yeah.
And he's one of those writers that when he says, you watch this movie, I just watched it. I took it for granted. Everything I got from him that he said was wonderful for 27 years. So, Joe, I'm going to miss you. You're irreplaceable, but thank you for your 27 years of movie reviews. But he talked about it as an art and a business. And as an art form, we're looking to take 24 to a whole nother level, and the artists are looking for 24 to maintain the art of the look of film for the foreseeable future. And if I'm going to look at a quiet little movie that's a soap opera type thing, you don't need 300 hertz or 120 hertz. Right. And one of the things we can do with HDMI now that no one's talking about is the variable refresh rate, where I can take the car chase scene, throw that at 120, and leave the people talking to each other at 24. So I can give the artists the flexibility to maintain the art of 24 and the entertainment value of 120 for action scenes. And in gaming, we're doing it now, but the ability to give the artist variable frame rate to maintain the look of the 20th century with the motion of the 21st century on a frame by frame basis. Let's go back to your processor, which looks at the TV content frame by frame and makes intelligent decisions. Now, we're going to have content that comes frame by frame in the Dolby era and the HDR10 Plus, which gives the cinematographer control over my pixels, like the sound guys had control over my speakers. But for content that doesn't have its own guided frame by frame content, I can simulate it with a processor. And when Robert's talking about watching some of these things that are not HDR10 Plus or Dolby Vision and saying, it looks theatrical, it's doing a frame by frame analysis and interpolating from there. So it's making some guesses, but the wonderful thing about new processing, these are good guesses. I mean, it's faster than me most of the time. So ideally, do I want my cinematographer to dictate the motion frame by frame? Yes, but that's expensive and it's going to be for the blockbusters. When my television chip can do it in my flat panel or my projector, and Robert talked about going from the processing in a flat panel, which was easy because we field of view, is not what I would consider immersive. It's a TV set. Now, when you're talking about a 97-inch TV set from a close viewing distance, now you're talking immersive. Robert, have you put any 97s in yet?
No, we're going to get the very first one in July.
Nice.
Okay. So you're going to find if you sit reasonably close to that.
I know.
I've had the misfortune of experiencing that TV. And why is the misfortune? I've experienced it, but I don't own it. So that's the misfortune. You don't want to spend time in front of one of those things unless you can take it home. And I will, but not this week because, again, not running yet. But that can be an immersive flat panel. Your video walls are immersive. Your projection, the reason we love projection is we were raised in movie theaters. And the nature of a movie theater, it's immersive entertainment. And I'm not going to get the giggles of the scenes of the Woody Allen movie where 75 people are laughing at the same time and it's contagious. You're not going to have that in the privacy of home, but the experience of immersive audio and immersive video hitting the market together. I mean, I'm spending more time in my theater than I had before because I'm used to traveling 25% of my time on the road. So I'm home more, Zooming more as we're doing here, meeting with people less. But I had a trip to London canceled this month. I have a trip to Barcelona canceled next month. So we're still seeing the after effects of COVID, even though it's fading, it's still clobbering my meetings. And Jason, you had a meeting last week out in Phoenix. Congratulations. You're out there.
Yeah, we did Phoenix last week, and then I leave Saturday for Barcelona for ISE. So, we're scheduling more and more classes, and we're definitely starting to get back into the normal role of things. But if there's one thing I could mention, though, I know we've talked a lot about that movie Gemini Man during these podcasts and in classes and stuff, because let's be fair, it's the only decent 60 frames per second movie right now. But man, there's so many parts of that movie where anything that already has fluid motion, fire, smoke, water, that stuff all looks unbelievable at 120. And there's a motorcycle scene at the end where they're chasing each other, and that looks really good at 120. But, honestly, the in-between scenes where it is people talking to each other, that at 120 looks really strange. And you start getting into that overly smooth motion look again. So I'm with Joel here. Games, of course, we've already seen variable refresh rate on games, but if we could incorporate this into Hollywood movies, make the action scenes 120, make the regular scenes 24, I think there's a lot of potential there for sure. And one other thing I want to bring up too, it's part of the HDMI 2.1 spec, but of course, people don't have to be compliant to it, but we have to talk about quick media switching. If you're going from one resolution or one frame rate to another, it would cause a hot plug event, and the TV and the source would have to resync with each other. But with quick media switching, we're going to see these things changing on the fly, which is going to be pretty cool. Switching inputs, switching resolutions, and things like that. So you add the quick media switching to the variable refresh rate, and now you have this seamless piece of content that you'll, as Joel said before, you'll never know what's going on in the background because it'll all work and it'll all look right.
Well, our job in the creative side of hardware is to provide the creative artists with tools to entertain us. And the variable refresh and the 120 and staying with the 24 you want. It's a different world now.
Right.
And it's going to take a while for this to even exist in content, but we've laid out the toolkit, and now the creatives can do what they want with it. The gaming people have jumped on first, and they have huge budgets, and they also have legs. They put a piece of content on, people watch it for 4, 5, 6 years. Sure. It's not a 4-month thing. It's a multiple year thing. So the gaming community has eclipsed the theatrical community and the adaptation of high frame rate. And I just had a different podcast, and we were talking about high frame rate and resistance to it and how people didn't like it. And they were talking about the 48 and the 60 experiments in film. And now I have a hard time talking about high frame rate at 60 when we did it in 1939.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's not, to me, it's not high frame rate. And
it's frame rate.
Did it look weird? It looked terrible. And, one of the pioneers behind this was Peter Jackson. And he has an amazing home theater with theatrical presentations and 2 projectors. And there were multiple generations of his work in his movies of high frame rate. So I'm looking to him as a creative genius to be able to deploy some of this, because he's one of those guys who just has to experiment. He's driven not just intellectually and creatively, but he's a tech.
Well, and let's also not forget too, guys, they just announced Avatar is going to be 120, at least in the theater. I mean, who knows what it's going to be when it finally streams, but we used to say it's coming, and we can't say that anymore. It's here.
And you've got Alita Battle Angel. Remember, those 2 were kissing cousins in creation.
Right.
So we're expecting another version of that from time to time. So again, you're talking Cameron. Come on now. These are cutting edge people. And, we can always recommend Keanu Reeves' piece on video production.
Yeah.
And that has been phenomenal. I didn't think Keanu Reeves had that kind of connection to the film and the love of the art, man, but he really did.
Well, and another thing to think about too, because I kind of get it, it's almost in a way kind of some pushback. It's like, we're never going to see these frame rates. We're never going to see these 20/20 color. We're never going to see this. We're never going to see that. But what I think people have failed to understand, I don't blame them, because the formats tend to change pretty often. But this system was built out with in mind to last for years. So when we're talking about 8K 120 and 10K 60 and all that stuff, yeah, it's not really relevant today. But years from now, it will be relevant, and we're not going to have a new system, because this system is built robust enough to handle all that in the future.
Well, even look at HDMI. People are sitting here and criticizing the HDMI folks. Well, come on now. We took a connector that was doomed And we gave it legs. The whole plan here was not to change the connector. Did we change the wiring of the connector? Yeah. We had 3 wires inside that would do 6 gig each. Now we got 4 wires that do 12 gig each. So same connector, you just plug it in, but the internals have to recognize which is a 3-channel system, which is a 4-channel system, which is old and which is new. So kudos, I tip my hat to those guys. And Jason and I struggled with some of the brightest people on the planet to get CEB28, the HDMI system design and verification document out. And for all CTA members and CD members, it's free. It's available, but this was like birthing a pachyderm. And HDMI was developing it as we were developing the standards. So this became a huge project, and it's a happy ending. So getting the old and the new to coexist in the same connector on hundreds of millions of products and have it take us into the future where your content may only be 18 gig and you'll flip a switch and you'll get 48 gig, and your system with quick media switching will just click and go on it.
Yeah.
Where my personal experience with this was my new projector with lasers and HDR, going back to the cable program my wife wanted to watch. And I hit the switch and she's sitting there saying, "What's going on?" Coming, it's coming, it's coming. She goes, what did you pay for this projector, Joel? Like, what? It came up. She goes, "That was forever." So this quick media switching, people will pay for that because, I don't like being laughed at. So, what did you pay for this? Kind of funny. Now, did she enjoy the movie? The color knocked her out. I mean, she's seen every generation of video I've seen as a willing victim. And she went backwards to 709 and non-HDR unwillingly, but wanted to watch something, and then switching back. It's just too long. So quick media switching, it's in its infancy. Don't expect this to be common.
Right.
It's going to happen. But, this is part of the new system. So, Robert, when you talk about what's happening in the field, it's what's happening in SMPTE, and it's what's happening in CTA. And the behind the scenes that we have to complement is the cooperation between SMPTE working groups and the CTA committee on 861G, where we have metadata coming from content being interpreted through EDID with intimate cooperation between SMPTE working groups and CTA manufacturing committees. The fact that this works at all is a miracle. And getting these people to work together never had to happen before. But with the switching of content and the way metadata comes across, we're catching up to something simple, which I always thought was a miracle. When I threw a disc into my disc player, my inexpensive player and my bare bones AVR knew the difference between Dolby and DTS, and a little flag came up on my audio and said what the format was. And there are multiple flavors of Dolby and DTS, and no one talked about it as metadata. It was just sync. And the audio guys made it work first. And they're still making it work better than we are. But this whole thing with EDID and metadata exchanges is complex, and we're getting it together. And the quick media switching will just be icing on the cake, because it's going to come together quickly instead of slowly. And depending upon your system, it could be 2, 3, or 15 seconds, which is an eternity for someone who pressed play and has to wait 15 minutes on a $100,000 system. Oh, sorry, 15 seconds. 15 seconds may as well be 15 minutes. It's forever. So are we on it? So everyone who's working with a client right now and they're complaining about it, guys, we're on it. We're not done. This was written in 2012. State of UHD was an international telecommunications document from 2012. It's going to take us 20 years.
And just to give you guys maybe a little bit of context on CEB 28, Joel, if you remember too, I'm sure you do, we were probably 6 months into that document, and we finally said, you know what, we're approaching this the wrong way. We blew it up and started from scratch because all this other stuff was happening at the same time. And if we hadn't done that, we would have an outdated paper already, but we had to blow it up and start from scratch.
Well, our aim was wrong. We were trying to make HDMI work over alternative technologies.
Right.
We still do. You've got fiber now, and you better have fiber, because if you're going to move these big signals around more than 3 feet, you better have some fiber in the system. You've got active cables, which came into play, and you got people taking it down to category cable, which I'm not a fan of, but it's amazing how good the category switches can be if your viewing angle is small and you're sitting far enough away from a TV set. Now, Robert's talking about big screens in people's homes where they're sitting reasonably close.
Yes.
Please do not downgrade to a 10 gig category system.
Or even 1 gig.
Even something immersive.
Right.
If it's immersive, you need real connectivity. You can't compress it further in the home. So we take great pains in content production, in post-production, in transmission to get you the full bandwidth signal. Don't kill it in the last meter, taking it down to a 60-cent connector.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of installations right now with like AV over IP systems where it's a bunch of 55-inch TVs in a restaurant, and that's fine. But you're doing a home theater or some high quality video in any way, shape, or form, regardless of the technology in somebody's house, it is not the right way to go.
Well, let's take your, Paul, we just said, you're a 55-inch TV set in a restaurant. So I'm 20 feet
You're 12 feet away.
55 inch. That's fine. Now you're sitting there, you've got a 65-inch TV set, you're 12 feet away. It's fine. Right.
And you're watching
the cable.
Right.
You want to change that to a 77? You're on thin ice.
Mm-hmm.
So where are we going? We're going bigger, better,
Closer.
And the word I keep on abandoning and the word we live by is immersive.
Yep.
It's audio video. And that's the old theatrical experience that Robert Zohn was talking about. I want a theatrical experience for my client. I want them to be mesmerized. But on the other hand, if I'm doing a projection system, and here's my home as an example, my wife and her friends watch tennis. This is not an immersive activity where you sit there passively with the lights off watching things. This is something where they're talking about the physical attributes of the players, which they do, while they're hitting the ball, eating popcorn and drinking wine. So in my dedicated room with light control, I have lights on so they can see each other, because this is a sports event. It's an interactive, interpersonal sporting event where people want to see and talk to each other and throw popcorn at each other. And it's not a dedicated theatrical experience. What do I need? I need intelligent lighting that is the same white point as my system. And Jason, you've come across some lighting. It's spectacular.
Oh,
Medialight.
Yeah, Medialight's just crushing it right now with their lights.
I mean, this is designed for studios, but he's got lighting. So Medialight can get you D65 full spectrum lighting. Put it in a fixture that takes it off the screen. Light the room, but don't light the screen.
Right.
Change your gamma, or you get to F. Put more light on. Exaggerate the color, because any presence of light in front projection diminishes color. So I've got a sporting mode that takes some science behind the idea of making the tennis game look good, even though the lights are somewhat on. Do I watch it that way? Yes. I'm throwing popcorn at my friends. It's a social event. Movies, different setup on the projector.
Totally different.
Now, Robert, I couldn't have done that without your high output projectors. I couldn't have done that without really good ambient light rejecting screens. Now, let's talk about something that's physically impossible. You can't reject ambient light.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can minimize the impact of ambient light on the contrast of the image. Now, to do that without altering the colorimetry of the image requires some talent in screen design. So what we're seeing here in the ALR screens, and I've got a number of them we've certified. I had one for many years. Now I have a number of them at different price points. Throw that into an ultra short throw projection system. I can compete with ambient light and not clobber the color. I can keep the color fidelity of the system where the intent of the artist is preserved, have light in the room, and have a really big immersive screen at some shockingly good price points without hanging something from the ceiling. So the ultra short throw projector that I had total disdain for upon launch, I'm starting to respect. And it's the engineers behind the optics of making a very wide angle lens that is not bad, getting a good screen that rejects some ambient light without destroying contrast, much better, but mostly just sheer light output. These things have lumens.
They're cannons, yeah.
Drive the hell out of the screen, which is the first thing I need, because the ambient light rejecting screen is going to eat light from the light engine as well as the room. So you're putting these things together. Don't be shy with the power of the projector. I want it to look like a big OLED, but I don't want it to cost $75,000.
Joel, if I could interrupt, you guys have given me the perfect kind of segue that leads into my next question, and that's about how to choose the right screen and projector combination.
So I wanted to comment on that, if I may. Thank you. It's okay, Bob? Thank you.
Yeah.
So most of my career, we specialize in building theaters, and we have designed all of our theaters to be wrapped in black duvetine.
Thank you.
Duvetine is a fabric that absorbs light, doesn't reflect any light. You put a flashlight into it, it disappears. On the ceiling, on the back wall behind the screen, and the left and right side wall, at least 5 feet in front of the screen, black duvetine wraps that room. So we used to, have these respectful debates with the homeowners and the wives and the designers. And my comment very respectfully back to them is, please spend your time designing the family room, the living room upstairs. This is the basement dedicated theater, and we want to have a movie theater experience here. That's the luxury premium experience. And Duvetine's our friend. Now that we have some decent ambient light rejecting screen fabrics, we can now have a white ceiling. And it's not as good as wrapping the ceiling with Duvetine. It's not as good, but it's usable and it's at least adequate. So now we can have more of a multi-purpose room. Like you said, for sports, we always have lights on. We tend to design the rooms to have light in the back of the room where you're sitting, low, like reading lights. We don't put any lights near the screen itself. So we've designed these rooms with lights that light up the area where you're sitting, so you can talk, you can read books if you wanted to, do knitting or whatever you want to do while you're watching any kind of content on the screen. So I was brought in by LG to design their theater room for NAB last year. And they said, oh, you're going to work with this decorator. I said, I don't need a decorator. I just need black Duvetine.
I need Duvetine, yeah.
That's all I need. That's all I need. I don't need any designer or decorator. We're just going to have the images on the screen. So you're not going to see anything when you walk in the room. And I want to represent your products to the best picture quality. So they all laughed at me, but that's how they did that room. And boy, did it deliver gorgeous images.
Robert, I'm glad you're saying that, Robert, because I tell people all the time, the last, the most impactful upgrade I've made to my system in the last several years has been making the wall behind the TV black.
Thank you.
It's not hard to do. And you just get so much more contrast. It's so much less distracting. On top of that, you throw a bias light behind it. I was worried that it was going to take away from that floating OLED effect, but it actually made it better, and it's easier on my eyes. And my girlfriend and I, we watch a lot of movies, and if I forget to turn the light on, she's like, "Where's the light?" I mean, it's become part of the system at this point. But regardless of TV, regardless of sources, regardless of the quality of the disc, the best upgrade I've made in my system in the last 5 years is making the wall black behind.
Okay, Jason, Robert, can I play devil's advocate here? Because I get this phone call 50 times a year, because I talk to consumers. I actually like talking to consumers. I learn things from them. But the common call I get on a regular basis is, I've got black carpets. I got black walls. I got a black ceiling. I've got black furniture. I know one thing. That dude is single.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And I'm dealing with luxury homes. Now, Jason, if your wall was dark gray, I would say you'd be 90%.
It would still be amazing for sure.
Yeah, so I can work with grays, but more importantly, and Robert talked about positioning the light. If you have a lighting designer and you tell them you want a certain color light you want, and they're beginning to learn about full spectrum lighting, and they're learning about color rendering indexes. And if you take things outside of your immediate field of view and do whatever color you want, but the immediate field of view around the screen. Now, let me give you one thing we're covering right now, and we're just writing this up for the home theater standard. And it has to do with objects that reflect light.
Yes.
One of the gross offenders in most of the theaters I come into are the electronic components. Now, the speaker may be black, but it's either black glossy or semi-gloss. So there's a simple test for this. You put up a white field on the projection screen, you sit down and you count the annoying things, the picture frames that are bright white, the gold filigree crown that goes above the top of the screen, the glossy wood finish that goes on the bottom, the 3 black front speakers that reflect things back. So any object that reflects white back in your room needs to be treated.
That's right.
And the electronics are the worst of it because they're glossy black. So it's black. I don't care if it's black or white. If it's glossy, I'm going to see it. And one of the things I learned years ago, where I was invited to an early HDR demonstration when Dolby first got involved in HDR, buying it from the Canadian University System in British Columbia. And they built a dream room. I mean, the walls were flat black, and they told you don't touch the walls.
Don't
'cause
touch
they were
them.
flat black. If you leaned on it, you made it glossy. The doorknobs, the door hinges, everything in this was flat black. And the contrast was what we were measuring for the original home theater standard for Cedia. And the room was amazing. So I got back home and I put up the white field, and they looked at things in my room, and I had some shelves that had glossy surfaces. I had a number of things needed treating with our old friend Duvetine, which doesn't cost very much. And so
It's not.
I just had to trim some things that I never noticed until I saw a perfect room.
Beautiful.
And was it measurable? No. Was it an annoyance? And it's like a dead pixel on old TV.
Yeah.
You don't notice it until you notice it. And after you notice it, you're dead. You have to fix it.
Yep.
So everybody who's following this through, put up a white scene. Go look into the room, see what's annoying in the room, and fix it. And that perceived contrast will go way up. And Robert Zohn deals with this all the time. And, you know, you don't have that many single guys with all black room. You're dealing with real families, real homes, luxury rooms. And what you can do with making sort of a lens hood on the projection screen, surround immediate surfaces that would reflect things back, something that maybe not be Duvetine, but close to Duvetine, and take care of the immediate reflections for audio. And we take care of immediate reflections for video. Get rid of anything glass, get rid of anything glossy, and the perceived contrast goes way up. And now, what Robert Archer talked about is picking the projector. Well, the first thing you got to pick is the room.
That's right.
The second thing you have to pick is where are you going to sit?
Yeah.
And now I know a potential viewing angle. So I need to pick a screen and projector. But until I know how big the screen is going to be, how high the screen is going to be,
That's another big one.
Sit from the screen, I can't pick anything.
Yeah.
So once I have the seating established, the room size established, the screen size established, I can work backwards. And I will tell you, in the HDR world, if you're thinking of projection lighting, whatever you thought of in the past, it's not enough anymore. Raise your ante by a factor of 5. Don't be shy. And in HDR, yes, there aren't that many scenes that are that bright. If we look at the average content level in HDR, it's not really that much brighter than SDR, but those spurious highlights, those
The
things,
fireworks.
the spice, the fireworks, the reflection scenes, the explosions, the bright scenes going off of water, the light bulbs in the room, the dark scene outside with street lights, all the things that give it punch.
Neon signs. I've seen a lot of neon signs lately that just, whoa, glowing.
And we have the color of the neon, we have light output. So whatever you thought of in the past for light output is wrong. Raise your ante. Now, we couldn't raise the ante in the lamp-based product world. And, you know, I remember a 5,000 lumen projector it took 4 of us to carry.
Yeah.
And it costs like a house. But I mean, we've got 5,000 lumen projectors that go in a room and they're quiet. 5,000 lumens, we used to have to put it in its own room. And we got really good at getting double glazed glass that would plug the hole so you wouldn't hear the fans of the projector coming through the hole that the lens had to shine through. And yes, if you're going to do that, you still need some optically treated glass. You've got to be really careful with that, but you don't need that anymore. I can actually put the projector in the room and make it reasonably quiet. You want real quiet? Build an enclosure for it.
That's right.
And you need another $12 accessory. If you're building an enclosure for the projector, you need a thermometer.
Yeah. Yep.
And the spec we wrote a long time ago is the ambient temperature inside the projection enclosure should not exceed 10 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the ambient in the room, or you will cook the projector. And I've seen lots of that. But, you know, high-powered projectors are not that noisy. If it's going to be near the people, box it in, cool it properly. And, man, do we have a lot of light for the money right now. So, so Sony's launch, Epson's new launch, and this product from the majors, the Optima, the BenQs, the Acer, the ViewSonics, this laser and LED combinations, lots of light for not much money. And do your lesser projectors have the black levels of the high-end projectors? No. But if they're going into a room where the light's going to be a challenge, they
not a big deal. Yeah.
Work. For an ambient light rejecting screen. So I've got one projector we reviewed last week. It comes with a handle and a speaker.
Yeah.
And you take it out of the closet, you put it in a coffee table, you pop up the screen. Now, is that going to be popular in the States compared to the Orient? No, but it's a fabulous little projector for the money. And it's got a handle. You just plop it down, plug in power and HDMI, and away you go. Instant theater in a box. And some of these pop-up screens, I mean, this is not our market. It's not a CDM market, but it's a big market.
Huge.
And for no money and a cheap screen, I can have a 100-inch screen, which in flat panels is going to be $16,000 to $20,000 minimum for a good one.
And the good news about that is there's just a lot of fun things you can do. Like I've got a bunch of nephews, and if we wanted to watch a movie outside one evening, we could get one of those inflatable 100-inch screens, one of those small projectors, and they're having an absolute blast with it. So, although it might not be this video file thing that we always seem to concentrate on, it's still going to be a ton of fun. And because of the price points of these things, I wouldn't be surprised to see tons and tons of people running out and buy them, and probably already are.
A million years ago, the product manager from Pioneer doing the Kuro took home one of their experimental projectors and put it in his backyard. He was renting an apartment on the beach. And at night, he had a system going in his backyard.
That's awesome.
Outside, and he had a crowd every night.
People were probably walking by and stuff.
I want to pick up cute girls. This was his idea of how to pick up cute girls.
Yeah.
We're moving in the backyard to sit down and watch a movie. But we've been doing this for a long time experimentally. And now all of a sudden, I've got pop-up screens. We did have one funny story. We had a big house down in Miami, and the gent wanted a translucent screen. I said, they want to be able to see it from both sides, and it's going to pop up in my backyard. I said, explain. You want to be able to see this from both sides? Yes, but that's the end of your property line. Yes. Why do you want that? I want my neighbors to eat their hearts out.
Oh, geez.
And he was sitting in his swimming pool watching this screen, floating around, drinking champagne and watching movies at night. Yeah. And that's fun. Now it's affordable. That was someone who owned a public company. He was the major shareholder. Now it's affordable for the rest of us. That's so right. Outdoor is now part of the video standard. And by the way, the audio that was dedicated to home theater audio has been rewritten by CTA and CDA. It's going to be audio, period. No matter where you put it, there's going to be a performance specification. And someone said, outdoor? Yeah, there's lots of good outdoor speakers. Can I get level 4 state-of-the-art performance? No. Can I have fun? Yes. And we're going to base the CD awards on these 4 levels. And you're going to be given awards based upon the level. Now, your dedicated room, you got a better shot at getting level 4. Your media room, you can do level 4 if you're really talented and have lots of budgets. But you can definitely get to level 1 and 2. So what's going to be acceptable performance on audio is being written as we speak. And one of the things we're writing it up on is based upon real world metrics and measurements. So it's going to be based on my audio compatriots and audio recommendation practice. It's going to be based upon 1 chair in the theater and 1 additional adjacent chair. So 2 seats have to become whatever level the room is going to be. Now they said that's going to be a piece of cake in video. No.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, on a high gain screen, move your head. It's going to change it. It's not a great screen. How about it, Jason? How about an LCD?
Oh, I mean, off axis, everything changes, even the good ones.
Even 1 chair?
Yes. Oh, I mean, literally, you can move your head like this. It's like sitting in front of a panel speaker. Like you move a little bit and it changes.
So the wisdom of this is going to be at least 2 seats are going to have to hit whatever level you're aiming at. But it's going to be a nice way for an end user to be able to buy a system saying, I want a level 3 system. Can't afford a level 4, but I want a level 3 system. Make sure it meets level 3 criteria. And we're going to have luminance specs, colorimetry specs, audio specs, sound pressure levels, checks, imaging specifications. So you can buy based upon not some fictional idea of what a dealer thinks is the best thing he sells, but an industry adopted 4-tiered audio video level of performance. And you'll be able to rein the industry in, because I, for one, as a CDA judge, I've seen enough $100,000 systems with $10 in-wall speakers to last. The in-wall speakers now, talk about a category that's come out into high quality,
killing it.
Quality. I've heard some in-walls that are stunning, and if I didn't know they're in-walls, I would never have believed it. So yes, the audio side, we can do media rooms, hide the speakers, hide the video. Can I get to level 3? Bring money and bring talent. Yeah, get to level 4. Be a tough room. I'd have to have design people giving me darker walls, not black, but darker walls. And so we can do level 4 media rooms if I have some control over the room. But remember, the room is a component, guys, whether it's audio or video. And a bad room will beat you every time. You can't throw money at it to fix it.
Right. If I could just mention one thing, I don't want it to slip my mind here, but I know we talked a lot about content. We've had a whole podcast just on content. I did watch the Batman last weekend. And if you guys want to see like a pretty cool scene, a pretty cool, what I might call a torture test, towards the end of the scene, Batman is knee deep in water. He's walking across the screen. It's very dark, but he's holding a bright red flare in his hand. And that bright red flare just glows off the screen. So if you haven't checked that movie out yet, pretty cool movie. I liked it overall, but that scene I really have been showing a lot of people lately. It's pretty fun.
And you're watching on an OLED?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it pops, man. It's crazy.
On a projector, but I gotta tell you,
for sure.
Current gen projectors, they do it.
Right. Yeah. The new ones. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Just the last projector I put in the house, it does these HDR scenes. Without HDR, no chance.
Right.
With HDR, you can do it. So the content's better, the hardware is better. The installation now is what's lacking.
Mm-hmm.
So the installers have to come up to speed, and the room has to be tuned for audio and for video. I did have one room where I was hired to go set this up in New York City, and he said, it's a black room. It's a perfect room. It's a black room. Well, it was black lacquer.
Oh.
With a black lacquer ceiling.
Ouch.
And a black lacquer coffee table.
Oh, man.
And the end user retained me and said, pull no punches, tell me what's wrong. You're going to calibrate the picture. And I said, okay, definitely. But which one do you want me to calibrate? The one coming off the left wall, the right wall, the ceiling, or the coffee table? I'm looking at a lot of pictures here. Which one do you watch? And I said, did your audio people tell you anything about black lacquer? They go, they don't like it. I go, well, I'll join the club here. You spent a lot of money on this because this was perfectly finished black lacquer walls. It was like the glossiest speaker you've seen, beautiful finishes, and it was completely counterproductive to audio and video at a king's ransom full of design money. And they brought in an acoustician. We treated everything with dark cloth, covered up all the lacquer, and he's got one of the best theaters in New York City.
Beautiful.
But I mean, we had to redo the room. So I'm biting my tongue, and it wasn't the dealer who hired me. It was the end user who said, don't pull any punches. Yep. And I hesitated, but I'm saying, okay, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly.
Other than the fact I couldn't watch anything in there. So go back to those reflective objects, go back to your walls. The room is going to be determining your performance every bit as much as your audio and your video gear. And when I'm looking at a well-done custom integration system, there's a lighting designer who helped with the lighting. There's an interior designer who gave us color schemes that can work with saturated colors towards the back of the room and desaturated darker colors towards the front of the room. I've got an engineering person behind the video that put up enough lumens, and we've got ample horsepower from the audio where the audio amplifiers are just loping along, never stressed out. So we're not clipping the audio, we're not clipping the video. We've got a cooperative room, and I can do a level 3 media room all day long now. The 4s are going to be rare animals, if not a dedicated room, but level 3 is going to be a stunning system. It's going to equal theatrical or exceed theatrical in a home. And the level 1 is going to be true to the artistic intent. And that remains our theme song from the day we started the company. We have the utmost respect for the myriad talents that go into the shooting, production, post-production, tuning, and the colorists, and all those people working hard to give us what they think is good entertainment. I don't want to ruin it in the last meter.
Right.
Right.
And we stay with that simple thought. You have to be true to the intent of the creative artist. And I want to bring that to my clients' homes. And the fact that I can do it now with light in the room on an immersive big screen is just fun. And we're making people happy. But the launch of bright projectors this year, overdue. Yes, I understand the cost and the physics and the rest of it, but we're here. We finally have it. We've been lusting after these things for years, and it was only available to wealthy people. And now it's come down to rather affordable systems at striking price points with good optics and good processing and good content. Plague it all. These are pretty happy years for home viewing.
Robert, Mr. Zohn, you know what it made me kind of perk up when you talked about the acrylic lens earlier. It reminds me of, synthetic diamonds now. They're very easy to spot because they're too perfect. And I would think in that acrylic sort of application, like what you're mentioning, it's probably the chemical makeup and the purities and all that stuff is like under controlled circumstances. And they've got infinite things they can do with it. So Why not make it pure? Why not make it solid? Why not curve it the correct way? And let's just make a really good lens for not a lot of money. I love that.
Yeah, this 18 element plastic lens, I hate to call it that even,
hey,
delivers, it's crystal clear, and it delivers a perfect optical image that is just beautiful. I'm so impressed with it.
Mm-hmm.
But be impressed with the challenge. You've got that many elements. Each element has 2 added glass surfaces.
Yep.
Yes, that's right.
So the other wizards that we're not talking about, we should be talking about, are the wizards of optical coating.
Yeah, that's a whole nother universe.
This is close to voodoo. But we're not going to have that many elements and not lose contrast. And an added glass surface is devastating to contrast. So the wizards of the coatings have been around for a long time, and they cut their teeth on glass.
Mm-hmm.
And it just works on synthetic as well. So the lenses are necessary. And the most important part of a camera to me has always been the lens.
For sure.
And the most important part of a projector is the lens.
Yes.
Forget everything else. Start with the lens. If you don't have a good lens, everything else is lost. Now, I'm going to lose contrast in lenses when I have high contrast scenes. It's inevitable. I want to lose as little contrast as possible, which means I'm going to have a lot of engineering in the lens. And these new elements at these weird, I can't even call it a grind. It's a weird mold. It used to be a weird grind. It took wizards. Now it's a weird mold, but we've got the formulas down. We've had the formulas for a very long time. It's just never affordable in glass. So acrylics here are amazing. And the optical coating is amazing. But it's a multi-pronged approach. So when we talk about 4K now, the average pro, I love this 4K. Well, sorry, you didn't see the 4K.
Yeah, right.
You're sitting too far away to see 4K. What are you seeing? Contrast, color, processing. You love 4K, yeah, but it's a multi-pronged approach to simulating your eye. I'm giving you better blacks, better whites, better color, better contrast, and a bigger picture. And yes, you love 4K, but it's not the 4K you see.
Right.
It's all the things that came along for the ride. And the beginning of 4K started without HDR. I'm sitting there saying, you threw the baby out with the bathwater. You got 4K TVs, no HDR.
Gosh, I remember some of those early demos, just checking out one manufacturer. At the time I was up in Richfield at Best Buy at corporate, and they had this team come in from the manufacturer, and they were doing this huge presentation. And it was in those couple of in-between years where it was 4K, no HDR. And we walked by the demo, especially being 10, 12 feet from it, because everyone's crowded around it. We're looking at it, we're going, all right.
So what? Yeah.
Yeah. It was just funny.
Most of the early 4K pieces didn't do HDR. So
that's what I mean. There was at least 2 years. Yeah, there was at least 2 years where there was 4K resolution, no HDR.
Well, there was a whole move at SMPTE to say, why don't we just do HDR and 2K?
I would love it.
Save all the memory.
I would love it.
Sorry, that ship has sailed. All the fabs are gearing up for 4K. You're going to do it in 4K. They say, but it takes so much bandwidth and so much storage, and we're not going to see it in most people's homes. They can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
So, sorry, too late. Part of the package.
Yeah, 1080p HDR would be sweet.
I believe ATSC 3.0 is 1080p HDR on all content. 10
Oh, interesting. That'd be cool.
I believe that's what it is. It's
this week. It's coming in better resolutions, but 1080p
at the beginning
is fine for most screens.
1080p uncompressed 10-bit HDR.
That's awesome.
And that's all I care about. You bet. So
right.
Robert, the criminal thing is, I talk to real people here on a regular basis. No one knows what ATSC 3.0 is. No one knows what Next Gen HD is, and no one even knows where to buy an
I have
HD
a very
antenna.
big job educating everybody. I educate everybody that walks into my store or calls me on the phone or writes me an email. They all learn about it. So I'm doing my job, spreading the good word.
I'm trying here, but I've got 1,250 homes in this community I live in. There's only one TV antenna. It's mine.
Yeah, I've had friends reach out to me in the past, and they're like, "Oh my God, like I don't have cable, I don't have this, I don't have that. How can I watch the Super Bowl?" And I'm like, "Go to a store and buy an antenna. Don't you remember? Like you can still get FM stations in your car, right? Well, guess what? You go buy an antenna. And you can still
Jason, they don't remember an antenna.
Everyone's forgotten.
You talk to people about rabbit ears. Young people don't remember rabbit ears. They've never seen it.
Yeah, and honestly, like this whole conversation is so funny. I'm 40, right? So I did still come up with antennas, but my younger siblings and stuff who are like in their 20s, you're exactly right. They're like antenna.
They don't remember. So Mr. Archer, are we pretty much wrapped?
I think we are. Yeah. I will add though, guys, I remember in the early days of high def, we had an antenna, a rooftop antenna, because at the time we subscribed to DirecTV.
Right.
And for the local stuff, we were using the antenna, and a lot of that was high def, and it was a blip on the radar for a brief time there.
Oh, but it went into your DirecTV system. There's an antenna in.
Yeah.
It's incorporated the same channel menu. I mean, Foy Wilkie was the engineer behind the RCA DTC 100, and he said, we're not going to have enough HD coming. We need the off air. So the off air was an input in the back of the DirecTV boxes. You plugged your antenna in, and it read your locals, and it mixed in the menu.
Yeah.
So they incorporated it to begin with in the original RCA boxes for DirecTV.
That's right.
And eventually they cut that cord 1, 2, 3 because they want to sell you the locals.
Well, and and I remember those RCA boxes, if I remember correctly, they were $1,000 in 2001. So it was nuts.
Yeah, we bought them 20 at a time.
Yeah, right.
Everyone had to have one. And we put up antennas where we could.
Yep.
And by the way, when you actually bought the locals from DirecTV, they looked terrible compared to the antenna.
Oh, they were smashed. The antenna, I mean, you're pulling it straight from the air.
Well, it was regulated. I think it was 18.39 meg, regulated by the FCC. They couldn't compress it.
Right.
They demanded you send a good signal. And so when was the last time you saw the free one was the good one?
For me, last Super Bowl.
Yes.
I break out. I've got one of those flat antennas. You just kind of stick it up against the window. I only take it out once a year for the Super Bowl. I think it was $20 and it works great.
I know.
And no one uses it. I don't think we've broken 2%. Counting the rural people who can't get cable, because those are the people who get DirecTV.
Those are the ones who, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's streaming more than anything else. That's
Totally.
Yeah.
Put the nail in the coffin for over the air. But
right.
Robert, do you have enough to put together a podcast with all the babbling here?
Oh, absolutely. I want to thank you guys for taking part in the podcast once again. I want to wish you a great rest of the day, and thank you for your help with the podcast.
And I look forward to seeing your edits. You got a lot to edit here. This is good, but I trust you're great. You're a great editor. We trust you on that. That's great.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, take care, all.
Always fun. Thank you. See ya.
All the best, everybody.
Okay, bye.